Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
I've never actually been jailed, held in jail. Well, in Monopoly. But other than the game of Monopoly, I've never spent time in jail. And actually, if you think about it, in Monopoly, the players spend an inordinate amount of time in jail or just visiting. But another story altogether. So we've done videos recently about people who were wrongly arrested and also where people had their identification confused with somebody else, and the police arrest the wrong person and hold them. So another story, and by the way, this now has to be the story that's been recommended to me the most of all time, and I apologize, I'm not going to thank everybody who sent it because literally it would double the length of the video. But to all those of you who saw it, thank you very much for sending it. Woman who spent nearly 2 weeks in jail sues the LAPD and others over mistaken identity arrest. The version I'm going to give you is from KTLA.com, a big station out there on the West Coast. Cindy Von Quednow and Karen Winter wrote it. And a woman said she spent nearly 2 weeks in jail after she was mistakenly identified and arrested last year, has now announced a lawsuit against the city of Los Angeles, the LAPD, and the LA Airport Police Tuesday morning. Bethany Farber. I'm going to say her name, and I often leave names out of stories like this, but I'm going to say her name because it's important. Bethany Farber is her name, and they saw her identification, and that name popped up with a flag on it. So she was at LAX last April, about to get onto an airplane to Mexico to visit her brother and her goddaughter when she was detained, aggressively interrogated about her identity, and taken into custody by the TSA because they said there was an arrest warrant for Bethany Farber out of Texas. Bethany Farber out of Texas. She repeatedly told them that there must have been a mistake because she's never been to Texas. So her name is indeed Bethany Farber, but not the one from Texas. I'm not the Bethany Farber you're looking for. She was accused of lying and was taken to the Linwood Women's Jail, where she was held without bail for 13 days, according to her lawsuit. Jail records do indeed show that she's released on April 28th, 2021. Now, while she was in custody, her grandmother suffered what her family described as a stress-induced stroke that ultimately led to her grandmother's death. Farber says she now suffers from anxiety and other symptoms, a post-traumatic stress disorder. She is seeking monetary compensation, but is also calling for reforms within the judicial system. This has caused me a lot of distress in my life, a lot of anxiety. It has set me back financially. It's impacted my business, Farber said Tuesday outside Los Angeles PD headquarters. There's a lot of people out there who this is happening to who don't have anyone advocating for them. They don't have their family fighting for them every day, and every day that they're in jail, wrongfully their lives are being dismantled. Her attorney said Tuesday that Farber's rights were violated because authorities didn't properly check or verify her identity. And now this might come as a big shock to some people, but there are people out there with the same names as other people. I've mentioned before that I went to high school with two kids named Mark David Brown. Okay, I've also told you that I know of several people named Steve Lehto around the country. A musician in Minnesota, a mathematician in the state of Washington, an executive at a food company down in the Midwest, and also there was a period of time where I lived not far from somebody who had my identical name in every respect, same first, middle, and last, but a slightly different birthday. And that was always going to be the thing I would tell a police officer if I got pulled over. I'd say, look at my birthday, just in case. So the attorneys pointed out that this Farber does not look anything like the wanted Farber. And she also doesn't have a criminal history, unlike the other one. Now, her attorney said that while she's in jail, his client saw people doing things that she could never have imagined. And of course, if you've never been to jail, and I've, like I said, never been incarcerated, I suspect there are things going on in there that you would not need to see. And I have spoken to people who spent time both in jail and in prison, and it's not fun. So she had to spend her nights in a cold jail cell listening to voices of other inmates screaming and crying. She saw fights within her cell. She saw fights in the common areas of the jail. The LAPD said they don't comment on pending litigation, so therefore they will not comment on this case. KTLA reached out to LA Airport Police, and likewise they're awaiting a response. Now, there are a bunch of different stories, a ton of coverage on this story, because this is a nightmare. You're going through the checkpoint at the airport. They look at your name. They go, oh, hang on a second. They pull you aside. Next thing you know, you're being arrested because you have a similar name to someone else. Now, we don't know if the middle names matched. And that is a bigger question, because if the middle names didn't match, then this is a slam dunk for the attorneys in this case. But there's a couple other things that were not in this version of the story that I saw elsewhere. It was also reported that not only did she keep telling them, you've got the wrong person, I've never been to Texas, but that somewhere along the line, they double-checked some other information and realized that they had the wrong Bethany Farber. Despite realizing that, according to some news sources, it still took them 3 days to release her. They knew she was the wrong person and kept her for 3 more days. Now, they'll often say that, oh, the jails are so busy and paperwork, got to make sure you don't release the wrong people, all kinds of checks and balances in place. Why weren't those checks and balances in place when she's brought in? If you can bring someone in on a whim, you can release them on a whim. And some people are going to say, Steve, you're oversimplifying it. It shouldn't take 3 days for them to say, oh, we've got the wrong person, we'll start the paperwork, and then they'll get out in 3 days. 3 days. They knew she was the wrong person, according to those news sources. Now, one of the other things I'd like to point out is the idiocy of this. There are people out there who are not that bright, who are in positions of power, and by that I mean they're capable of throwing you in jail for nearly 2 weeks because you've got a name similar to someone else's. If you see the mugshots of the 2 women, they do not look anything alike at all. The one they're looking for, short brown hair. The one they grabbed, long blonde hair. The faces are different. The features are different. They look completely different. Now, I know you're going to say, Steve, what if they thought, for instance, that at one point she had short hair and dyed it one color, and now she's got long hair dyed it another? That's possible. That's possible. That could happen. But it's another warning flag. So if you're a police officer and you've arrested somebody who is insisting you've got the wrong person, the first thing you do is say, oh, okay, how would we confirm that? Let's take a look at the mugshots. You pull up the mugshot and go, that's not her. But let's suppose you say, well, you know something, they're both women. Close enough. Do their middle names match? What about their driver's licenses? Because you know she's getting on an airplane, she had ID on her. So that ID, I'm guessing as a resident of California, would be a California driver's license. Does the California driver's license information match up with the information of the woman they're looking for in Texas? It probably doesn't. Now, again, you're going to say, Steve, what if she's got fake ID or something? Well, here's the thing. Again, these are all just little indicators that all point one way, and the only thing they're going off of is the similar names. The woman's name is Bethany Farber. We grabbed a Bethany Farber. What are the odds that we did that right? Well, I went just for the fun of it, and I just went onto Instagram, and I ran Bethany Farber. Now, I found at least 7 Bethany Farbers. Now, again, there are people on Instagram who don't use their real names. There are people on there who use fake names. But I also found the Bethany Farber that got arrested. She's on there. Clearly, at least someone using that name in that photograph is on there. But the reason I'm saying this is that there were 7 on Instagram with that name. Presumably, any one of those 7 going through the airport would have gotten arrested and treated like this because they've got the same name as a woman from Texas who's wanted on some kind of warrant. And so I understand that the police have got a difficult job. And I understand that they're on the lookout for people and people are dangerous and they want to get these people out of circulation and wanted on warrants and so on. But you also have to use common sense and understand that there are people out there who have the same names as other people. And that's not that remarkable in this day and age. And so when you arrest somebody on an outstanding warrant from another state, because remember, she's in LA. She's in LA and they go, we've got a warrant for you out of Texas. Okay? Now, California and Texas, 2 separate states, they're not that terribly far apart, but the point is that if they said we've got a warrant for a woman from California named Bethany Farber, you go, okay, that is a little more believable. But a warrant from another state, and she says you've got the wrong person. Well, like I said, look at her ID and compare it to the mugshot. You go, oh, they look very different. Compare the middle names. compare the driver's license numbers. Believe it or not, and I know there's a lot of people out there who know this, but some who do not. But you can actually memorize your driver's license number so that if I ever got pulled over and I didn't have my license on me, I'd say, here's my name, here's my date of birth, but you want my driver's license number? I'll give it to you. And I give it to them. So it's just the same as memorizing your social security number. So let's suppose that she didn't have any of that on her, but she could still probably recite her social security number or her date of birth. And then they could check that and go, oh, wait, there's a Bethany Farber in California also. Okay? They have access to this information. They can pull up driving records, for instance. Why didn't they do that? Because presumably she's in California. She's probably got a California driver's license. Like I said, they could look at the one she probably had on her when she's getting on board the plane. Maybe she was carrying a passport. I don't know. But she had to have ID to get through TSA. And as she's going through TSA, they look at the ID and they go, oh, we're looking for a woman with that name. And like I said, it all fell apart because they didn't bother checking anything after that. And so this is a crazy case. I'm not sure what she's entitled to for 2 weeks in jail. I did the video a couple days ago about the woman who spent a couple months in jail because of the stress ball that they said they thought contained something, even though the test said it didn't. And she got over $1 million for that. But that was a few months in jail. So I'm not sure what this is worth. But if I'd gone through this, you can imagine I'd be filing a lawsuit also. And she does say that part of what she's looking for is a reform to the system. And I understand. Believe it or not, I've got friends who are cops. I've known friends. I've known police officers. I've had friends who are cops, and I talk to a lot of police officers. And their job is often difficult. Okay, a lot of stress. But they should use common sense. And I understand that when they arrest somebody on an outstanding warrant for another state, they probably hear it all the time. You got the wrong person. They probably hear that all the time. You've got the wrong person. But your job still should be to double check that. I'm not saying like take DNA samples and send them off to a lab. And I'm saying just check the common sense stuff. How many Bethany Farbers are there? Oh, there's a whole bunch of them. Maybe we've got the wrong one. I mean, what if all 7 of these women are going to an Instagram conference and there are 7 Bethany Farbers? Would they have arrested all 7 of them? So this is concerning that this could happen in this day and age. But she spent almost 2 weeks in jail, protesting her innocence the entire time. Not that she didn't do the crime, that she was the wrong person. And that would have been very easy for them to check. So from KTLA.com, Cindy Von Quednow and Corrine Winter wrote it. Everyone sent it to me. Woman who spent nearly 2 weeks in jail sues the LAPD and others over mistaken identity arrest. Questions or comments from below? Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Ask yourself, what are you grateful for? You'll find many answers.